The East Baton Rouge Parish Library believes that a thriving business community is good for us all. That's why we help entrepreneurs start businesses with tools like Gale Business Builder. Keep commerce rolling by providing access to computers, printers, and free Wi-Fi at 14 branch locations. Get a library card. Grow your business at ebrpl.com/business.
Good morning and welcome to Strictly Business. I'm your host, Penny Font. This webcast features conversations with Louisiana's most influential CEOs, entrepreneurs, and community leaders, with the goal of providing insights, ideas, and inspiration to help you and your business grow. We want to keep Strictly Business as interactive as possible. So for those joining us live, here's an icebreaker question for you. Submit your vote in the comments, and the results will be posted at the end of the webcast. Strictly Business is brought to you by the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Without their support, this project would not be possible. This month, we're talking with H&E Rentals CEO Brad Barber about executive and workplace mental health. Founded in 1961, H&E is one of the largest equipment rental companies in the nation. The company is on a growth trajectory to expand its geographic reach across the United States through acquisitions. Brad Barber has been the company's CEO and director since January of 2021. He has emerged as a strong advocate for executive and workplace mental health initiatives and has been the force behind the company's partnership with nonprofit When You Are Ready in a campaign to raise awareness about the rise in fentanyl overdoses in Louisiana. Most recently, H&E partnered with the nation's leading mental health advocates and experts to launch a mental health and hope training module to shed light on the mental health crisis as a resource for its employees. H&E is also sharing the asset with equipment industry companies nationwide at no cost. Brad, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Penny. Thank you for having me today.
H&E has been a really unique community leader in addressing addiction and mental health issues more broadly. You've taken up two initiatives in this realm. The first was a public campaign to create awareness around the dangers of fentanyl addiction. The second is the newly released Mental Health and Hope training module I just mentioned. Could you please give us an overview of both?
Sure, yeah. A couple years ago, we realized fentanyl and the impact it was having on our local area. It's a nationwide issue. Many people see it on the news, but I don't know that they fully appreciated the impact. In that year, 2021, there were over 300 deaths from overdose in East Baton Rouge Parish, with more than 80% of those being related to fentanyl. We had an employee who, while was not fentanyl related specifically, had some drug-related issues. This was actually a homeless individual we had hired to help assist them get going again. They developed a mental health issue. It turned out to be somewhat drug-related, synthetic marijuana-related psychosis. And I got led to someone who taught me a whole lot about fentanyl and the effects and shared the stats and information. And we felt compelled as one of the larger employers here in East Baton Rouge to not only educate our employees, but to bring it further for the broader community to make sure they were really aware of the risk. Secondarily, it's really the mental health piece, and that's come on this year full steam. Unfortunately, just a year and 3 days ago, to be precise, one of our 6 regional vice presidents took his own life by suicide. This was a highly successful individual. Great team, well respected, loved by all, had a beautiful family, 2 children who were both preteens. And we were left asking ourselves, what's going on here? What's happening? And conversely, got educated on the ever increasing and nasty stats associated with mental health crisis, and fully started to appreciate that folks didn't know where to seek help when they needed the help, and that there was hope for help. And so that's led us to our more recent initiative that we're trying to share with the public, not only here in Baton Rouge, but across our 31-state geography.
Thank you for sharing that. How does H&E's family-oriented culture influence its approach to mental health?
Yeah, well, I think it's easy to say you have a family culture and we care about each other like we're family. Yet it's quite another. I have a large family. I have 5 children, and I love all of them. But on a given day, I may want to put one of them in a headlock. And I like to pick with people and say, when you have close relations, it's not always convenient. It's not always at the right time, but it should always be very important. And we believe that leading with our actions is critically important to matching what we say with our words. And so that's what's led us to take these actions.
So, how did the experiences that you had with colleagues impact your perspective on mental health in the workplace, and how has your own approach to mental health changed over time?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I'll go back to when we started our fentanyl campaign. I didn't know anything about mental health resources here in town. I've been fortunate that my immediate family has not been impacted by addiction or mental health specifically, but I've known plenty of people who have, and I've had family members who've struggled with both, throughout my 51-year existence here on this earth. That being said, I got led to Tanja Miles about 3 years ago, a community activist, lived experiences, who's dedicated her life to serving others with both addiction and mental health. I joke with people today, I said, whether I want her to be or not, she's my new best friend. I spoke to Tanja 45 minutes this morning on my way to work, talking about an initiative we have to try to assist other businesses that's really surrounded by this broader mental health campaign. I didn't know about the Bridge Center for Hope. I didn't know there was such thing as a stabilization facility here in Baton Rouge. I didn't know about the resources. It was my frustration and desire to help an employee here while they couldn't work here anymore because of their condition. It was my hope to try to find them the help they needed to go forward. And in doing so, I became more aware than I ever could have been before about mental health resources, the stigma associated. And so that just brings us full circle. When we had the loss of our friend last year, it's interesting to think who God puts in your path, and you don't always understand it, while you're working on the mission at hand. But in fact, I had become, Tanja's as good a friend as I have in this world. Dan Gillison, who's the head of NAMI. I've met with the leaders of APA, the American Psychiatric Association, the leaders of Vibrant, who man and run and distribute for 988. They man the phone calls for their resource center. The Huntsman family from Utah, who have pledged more than $1 billion of their funds to wipe out and erase the stigma associated with mental health so people can get help. So this all happened before we had a loss here at H&E. And so when the loss occurred, unfortunately, like many people, we took a real deep breath and said, what do we need to do to better serve our people so they can be informed and seek help while there's time to be helped?
So you touched on this a little bit, stereotypes, challenges. What stereotypes or challenges have you faced in implementing mental health initiatives at H&E? And can you discuss any specific strategies the company uses to reduce the stigma surrounding mental health issues?
Yeah, look, honestly, it's been miraculously easy. There have been no stereotypes. Every year, normally the first week of December, we hold our annual leadership conference. Last year, we were at the Gaylord Resort in Orlando, Florida. I had 293 of our 3,000 employees, our leadership from across the country in attendance, and I had what I thought was going to be a very difficult conversation. It was a very serious conversation where we were acknowledging the loss of our dear friend, and it was still fairly fresh, a couple months old. I talked about the statistics that 1 in 4 people are affected by mental health. I talked about, the continuum. I talked about the warning signs. This was a 45-minute conversation that, frankly, I entered the conversation thinking it would be the most difficult address I'd had in my career because it was really to celebrate our success for the year, meaning 2023. It was to talk about our outlook for 2024, to educate and energize ourselves. And with that, I said, this is going to be tough. Let me tell you, it was incredibly easy to have the conversation, but it was incredibly heavy after the conversation because the number of people who came up to me personally and said, I feel like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. Let me tell you my story. I deal with anxiety or depression, or I'm married to someone who has self-mutilated or is bipolar, and the list went on and on and on. I had 3 different employees face-to-face tell me that day that they had lost a spouse or a parent in the last 12 months due to suicide. So by the end of the day, it was somewhat overwhelming to realize it. I actually contacted Taj and some of the folks I just spoke about who are mental health professionals and said, well, if there was a cat to let out of the bag, it's running around the Gaylord Resort in Orlando, because it was an incredibly easy conversation to have, although heavy. And people wanted to hear. What was abundantly clear to me is that there were people who said, I need help. And there's some great examples of people who have now received help and they're living much happier lives. And had we not addressed it, I'm not sure they would be getting the help they deserve at this moment or have received. Uh, but as far as being difficult to have a conversation, it's a really easy conversation. You need to care enough about people to inform them with some facts, address it. But I don't think there's anyone that's has many friends, neighbors, or coworkers that's not been directly impacted by mental health.
That's so powerful. Talk a little bit more about the role that you believe awareness campaigns can play in addressing mental health issues. That was a perfect story to kind of illustrate that.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunately a perfect story. And look, I think it's incumbent upon all of us when we see a need in society. Often folks want to look to politicians or scream at the TV and they want other people to solve their issues. And I tell you, I think we're here to help each other solve issues. And when you have a unique perspective or maybe unique connections, I think you should have the responsibility of sharing that. And so, what we've done as we came into 2024 is we developed, an online training we delivered through our LMS, our learning management system, and we've created a separate website so all people can access this same information, right? It's the training, it's the helpful resources, it's a variety of information, all mental health related. And it's our goal to continue to develop this and share this information going forward.
Talk to us about how the Huntsman Family Foundation and other partners that you mentioned earlier collaborated in developing this training module, and what specific goals do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, well, the specific goals we hope to achieve, by the end of this year was to have more than 20,000 people informed through this 12 to 15 minute training. Uh, I've, we're on the cusp of that right now, so we're going to well exceed that. I don't know, we're not going to revise our target. We're just going to keep running hard and speaking to people. It was interesting. This Friday will be 3 weeks ago. I was in Utah with a business who employs over 6,000 employees in 8 states. They're not in the same industry that I happen to be in. And they unfortunately suffered 4 deaths by suicide within 45 days. And so that CEO called me and says, hey, I understand you have some experience in addressing your employees. Can you come kind of speak to us about how you did so and make a difference? And I told them much of the same things I've told you already. It's a tough topic, but it's an easy conversation. And so we're willing to extend ourselves outside of our state that we're working in and living in today, and certainly outside of our industry. I've worked with our trade organization, the American Rental Association, more than 100,000 members, and made all of our material available to each of those members. On a weekly basis, I'm contacted by someone with a really difficult situation or story, either nearly a loss or a loss of life from someone who suffered from mental health, asking how do they access it. And it's a little frustrating not to get the calls. It's a little frustrating that they don't already have the information in front of them that we've tried to make available. So we still have work to do there, but that's what we hope to do. Now, as far as working with the Huntsmans and others, these are organizations that it's been interesting. I know the Huntsmans, they're great people, they're serious, they're focused, and that in and of itself is encouraging. But what I didn't fully appreciate, whether it be the Huntsmans or the APA or some of these other mental health centric organizations, is they get very enthusiastic when they see businesses working on their own to take an initiative like this and move forward. So to say that they're helpful or willing to provide whatever they can would be an understatement. They've been incredibly generous with both their time, their information, and happy to help us in any way they possibly can.
Yeah, well, it sounds like what y'all are doing is starting to spread. What role do you see technology playing in supporting mental health in the workplace? Obviously, that's a big component of what you're offering now with the training module.
It is. I think technology is tremendous. I mean, technology allows us to communicate effectively with so many additional people. When folks have a mental health issue, they just don't know where to start. They're overwhelmed. It's maybe a child or some other loved one. They don't know where to go. And so to be able to deliver kind of concise, bubbled up information in an easy way. Look, just the 988 phone number, when I speak to people, I present it as the sister number to 911. And I say, if you're in crisis, you dial 988 and someone's going to answer that, a live person. You're going to speak to them and they're going to help triage the situation and give a person the correct direction. That alone is enough. If just they know that one fact, that could do so much for them when they're in crisis. Technology, listen, it's great in another way. I talk about LMS, or our learning management system. People who have worked in larger businesses know that a training shows up, you log in, you take your training, it measures your engagement, it measures your results, you understand how long it took to take the course, and you understand the completion ratios. That's important, because if you just deliver information to employees and hope they take it without being able to manage that information, you're really doing your employees a disservice. I mean, it took us a week and a half to get just over 3,000 people through our training. Again, it's a quick, easy training. My hope is that we can develop an external or business-to-business type LMS, because what I can't do is I can't host, hundreds of thousands of people on H&E's learning management system. However, I can provide the data to anyone who has an LMS or a like system, and I can stand it up in different environments and let people access and gain the information. But I think the next step for this is really to have a separate LMS that's more business to business, so we can deliver it and help manage for other people that don't have the capabilities.
I can imagine that would have tremendous impact. What are a couple of lessons that you've learned personally collaborating with mental health experts in the Huntsman Foundation?
Just how many people are actually working on this issue. It's like a lot of things. You start to peel the onion back and you realize there are a lot of layers to it. And different people are in different areas. Different people leverage their resources and their time and their relationships effectively. And other folks are just completely unaware of the larger or other organizations who may be working on the particular topic. So, I've come across a handful of people that may be the most special people I've ever met. I mean, this is a heavy, difficult topic. This is one that doesn't, if you're successful, that's great, but it doesn't have a lot of rewards, because what you're trying to do is save lives. You're trying to inform people. And that's partly why I think so much of the folks who do this work. I'm glad I was not born into this. I'm glad I don't have a mental health background or education. In some ways, I wish I didn't do the work today, even just being an advocate for the cause, if you will, because it's not a fun area. For years, I've worked with disadvantaged and at-risk youth in my spare time or in my volunteer work, and that's not always fun either. But it's one thing to see a 15-year-old become an 18-year-old and see them go to college and realize that maybe they wouldn't continue their education, or maybe it's a VOTEC school for that matter. But to say, hey, I made a difference in this child's life, and not that I've made a difference in nearly enough people's lives, because I haven't, but you can see some results, right? Whether it's 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, this is a different topic. This is one people don't want to talk about. There's an embarrassment and a shame. And, the truth is, that's unfortunate, because you can't get help if you don't address an issue.
Yeah, that's amazing what you have done. How important is top leadership support in the success of mental health programs in the workplace?
I think top leadership support is important in anything you want to be successful in. Listen, H&E is 3,000 employees strong. We've had tremendous years of growth. We're going to continue to be a strong, outstanding company within our industry. That being said, leadership plays a role, but it's the 3,000 employees out in the field selling, renting, delivering, and fixing the machines every single day. They're the ones that make the difference. My job is to make sure they're empowered with the right tools and information to do their job. It's no different with mental health. If folks aren't aware, if there's not a conversation that allows them to become aware that they're not the only person, that the overwhelming statistics show that this is a pervasive issue, and they don't understand the direction to go when they start to see it, and frankly, I think leadership has failed. I hope more leaders, and look, by the way, let me tell you, with these resources that I'm telling you I have, these relationships that I have, you know what I did with all these relationships until we had a death by suicide a year ago? Not much inside of our company. I mean, I was helping other people. I didn't think about H&E in that respect. I didn't, for some reason, I really missed an opportunity to address mental health more proactively. That being said, now that I have, it doesn't make us any better than another company. It makes us more aware. And I would encourage anyone who may hear this or see this to not wait for something to happen, because you have 1 in 4, and if you're fortunate, 1 in 5 of your employees who have some type of mental health diagnosis.
Yeah. Good, very strong words. Advice, you mentioned some advice that you would offer to CEOs in implementing, addressing mental health. What do you hope other executives might glean from H&E's approach to mental health?
Look, if they're local and we can be helpful, I hope they reach out to H&E. We will deliver any resources we have in any format that they can digest it in. If they want it printed, we'll give it to them printed. We can go old school. If they want us to come speak to groups of people or to try to help them understand how they can engage employees, we're happy to do so. What I would say, I had a CEO ask me, well, what's the limit? What is pushing too far? How do you know where the line is? I think when it's life or death and you realize that, there's no line. If you care about people, you got to erase these imaginary lines where you think there's some kind of legal risk and be willing to have a conversation. One of the best pieces of advice I've been given personally, and was from a mental health professional who works in an advocacy role. He said, listen, look at your employees in the eyes and say, how are you doing? And just kind of stare them down and get a response. And don't be weird about it. But if you see something a little different or something's off, people care that you care. And if you don't take the time to connect with them, you're missing your opportunities.
Are there other things that leaders can do to foster an environment where employees feel comfortable discussing mental health issues? So many of them don't feel comfortable, revealing that information.
I think if people see that their leader's comfortable having a conversation like that, then they inherently realize it's, I'm going to revert back to my comments that we had in Orlando last year in our annual leadership conference. To have that many people just openly want to discuss very personal items in some cases. Some people said, hey, can I talk to you on the side, or can I speak to you at another time? And of course the answer is yes. But many of these people came right up to me. One of them gave me a big old hug and said, man, you just lifted a load of an invisible backpack off of me that I didn't know I was carrying around. And let me tell you why. And he didn't care who heard. And those stories were just very pervasive within that group, and I'd have no reason to think everyone couldn't get the same type of results.
That's wonderful. How do you address the mental health needs of executives differently from the general workforce, or do you see it as the same?
I see it as the same. Listen, I guess, everyone can say their job's more unique than the next person, and I guess an executive could fairly say they don't have as many people to speak to, and they're more narrowly within the workplace who they can speak to. But I think executives have more resources as well, generally speaking. If an executive had an issue, they have greater capabilities than most rank and file employees to seek professional help. So at H&E, we don't treat it any differently. I think the stats that are important to a truck driver and a technician and a salesperson and a branch manager are the same bits of information that are available to the executive team who reports to me. And so there's no delineation for us here at H&E.
You touched a little bit on this earlier. How does H&E plan to expand or evolve its mental health initiatives in the future? Are there some other things that you're looking at?
Yeah, well, there are a variety of things we're looking at. We talked about the training. That training's now for all new hires. It will be an annual training, the same way we do code of conduct and broader safety training. So it'll be an annual training event just to ensure people stay fresh with that information that's being provided, the stats information and resources. More importantly, we've done things with our EAP. Again, I've got to tell you, some of our employees didn't know what an EAP or Employee Assistance Program was about. And for those who did know about the EAP, they didn't realize that it could be confidential or was confidential, depending on the nature of why they were reaching out, or they didn't know how to reach out to the EAP. They saw a website somewhere in annual packet we gave them when we do enrollment, open enrollment, but they didn't fundamentally know how to make access. We've added a PA, a physician's assistant on staff. This person has about 10 years experience in mental health and 10 years in trauma, physical trauma. To say that's been a huge windfall for us is an understatement. Employees are so reticent to engage with a medical professional who can appreciate and understand their condition. It's been very eye-opening to us.
That's incredible. What are some early indicators that a company might need to address mental health more proactively?
Well, you don't need any other indicators. I mean, they're there. Look at the national stats, look at your local stats if you can access them. Mental health affects everyone. If you look at the demographic data, Hispanic, African American, white, Asian, male versus female, they're all scary high and they're all increasing. So there's not a unique demographic or geographic location that should be less concerned about this issue. It's real. It's in your business. It's plaguing some of your employees at various levels. And so the longer you wait, the longer it takes for your employees to potentially get help.
As we close out, is there anything else, any other advice, anything else you'd like to share with us?
I don't have any additional advice I've not shared. I would say this: if my challenge to executives or leaders at any level, if you sincerely care about your employees, have a conversation. They want to have this conversation. It's not a difficult conversation. It's a heavy conversation. It's not a fun conversation. But if you sincerely care, you have the conversation and you will know that you've been effective.
Brad, this has been so incredibly informative and insightful. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Penny.
And thanks also to our viewers for tuning in today, as well as our sponsor, the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Please join us again for the October 16th episode of Strictly Business. On behalf of the show's director, Tim Coles, and myself, enjoy and make your day a great one.